If you had 5 minutes with Vaden one last time, what would you say to him?
That I was proud of him. That he was doing all the right things. He was making good choices for himself, and that he had worked so hard to get to where he was going, and regardless of what happened, we're still proud of him.
This story is about a mom who lost her 18-year-old son who had just joined the military. I had the privilege of knowing this family, living right beside of them for 3 years in a little apartment in Bowling Green, Kentucky. Listening to the footsteps right across from me, the laughs, the screams, and the joys of raising a family. Vayden Forbes' mother, Tina, sat down to talk with me about what she could share. Thank y'all for listening.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here. It's going to be great.
So you have how many kids? You have a big family.
5 altogether.
How old is Vaden in the age progression of your family?
He is the second. He's the oldest boy, but he's the second born.
Talk about who Vaden was. He recently joined the military.
He recently joined the National Guard. He actually signed at 17 years old, so he spent his 18th birthday in basic training. But he was so excited. He had wanted to do this his entire life. We got pictures of him as a little bitty kid dressed up in his army wear. He was an army boy. He always wanted to be a soldier. He wanted to do all the things and go to school, and he wanted to build things. So he went in to the National Guard as an engineer. Actually, it was 12C, which is combat engineer. He built land bridges, which is basically a truck that unfolds into a bridge that they can drive out to wherever, make a bridge so that everybody else can get across. He was so excited, so excited.
When he first joined the military, how long had he been talking about it? And you talked about that excitement. What's one of the first things that he said maybe after his basics or after he got back?
Oh my gosh, he was ready to just take everything apart and rebuild it back. He wanted to do everything right then and there. He had this kind of lull period in between training to when he would actually get stationed in his home station, they call it, where he would go for his drills and, when they would send him to do different things out in the summer and things like that. And he wanted to go right then. Like, he didn't want to spend time at home just waiting around. He was ready to get everything started right then and there.
So what kind of kid was he? What was his favorite hobbies? And maybe talk about him growing up.
Oh gosh, he was always the jokester. Always wanted to make people laugh, always cutting up, cracking jokes, wanted to be outside. He wanted to work on things. He would take everything apart. Took apart the VCR one day because he just wanted to know how it worked and decided he was going to put it back together, and it worked until his brother fed it a peanut butter sandwich. So yeah, he loved building things. Working on cars. He could just look at something and be like, oh, well, I can figure that out. He would take it apart and fix it and put it back together. That's what got him on the path of being an engineer. That's just the mindset that he had. He liked to build things. He wanted to know how it worked, how he could make it better. He was building carburetors at 7 and 8 years old, taking them apart, working on the four-wheeler, working on the dirt bikes, things like that. You just take it apart and fix it.
So, looking back at Vaden, the crazy part of this is we were actually neighbors for two or three years.
Yeah.
And so I saw Vaden. He was just the happiest kid.
Always
happy. He was always smiling. He never had anything negative really to say whenever I would see him.
Loved everybody. If you weren't his friend, you would be, and he was going to make sure of it. Loved everybody, didn't matter what they were doing. If you had a car and he did not know you, and he saw you outside working on that car, he's going to be right in the middle of it before it's all said and done. It's just what he liked to do.
It sounded like Vaden was the type of kid that people wanted to be around. And so looking at the night that you guys found out about this, or maybe the next day after this, can you kind of talk about what you are allowed or legally that you can talk about, and maybe kind of set the night up for people that don't know about what led up to his death?
It started out as just a normal weekend. He had been in town filling out job applications, looking for apartments. He had just gotten accepted into the engineering program at Western and their ROTC program. So he was looking at apartments to kind of be in between Bowling Green and Owensboro, where he would be going back to do drill and things like that. So he was just out getting stuff that he needed. He was working on his truck, and then he was like, hey Mom, I'm gonna go hang out with some friends. We've got a video game that we want to play. Of course, he hadn't played any of his games in months because he'd not been home. Never thought anything about it. Fine, son, he's doing all the things that he needs to do, being responsible. He's being an adult. He's doing all the things. I had no reason to second guess his choices of where he was going or what he was doing.
He wasn't alone, right? Either.
No, he wasn't alone. His girlfriend was with him. They were all just going to go, hang out, play video games. No big deal, right? Had no reason to think otherwise. I've since questioned myself of, what if I would have told him, you just need to stay home, like you've been gone for so long, we just want you to kind of stay home and hang out with us. But on the flip side of that, I really can't question myself too much on that because I had no reason to think that anything wrong was going to happen or that anything would be, not the way that he said it was going to be. They're going to go play video games. Okay, great. He's still technically a teenager, even though he's considered a grown man. He's in the military, he's working, he's doing all the things. He's still a teenager. He still wants to do what teenagers do. And I had no reason to not let him go. Everybody's going to second guess themselves and question, the what ifs and the, why did this happen? Why didn't I do this, that, or the other? But in that instance, I had no reason to question him. We never would have thought that something like this would have happened. That's never a phone call that any mother wants to get, especially hearing later on down the road, the timeline of events still doesn't add up. So we still question that a lot, but that's definitely not the outcome that we would have predicted that day.
Do you feel that there was an urgency from the people that he was around to help him?
No, not at all.
What happened to his girlfriend?
And
her name was?
Her name was Haven. She's a sweet girl. She'd also graduated high school. She was looking into getting into PJs for cosmetology. She wanted to do hair and makeup and nails and all that kind of stuff. So the Friday before this, her and I had actually sat down and started looking at different ways that she could apply, how to get scholarships and grants and things like that to help get her into school. And they had their whole lives planned out. They were excited. They were ready to do all the things. They were going to take it head on and just go with it. They had a plan. And of course, she hadn't seen Vaden in months either. Of course, they corresponded through letters and phone calls while he was gone, and she went with us to his graduation. But, they wanted to hang out. They wanted to play games, and they wanted to see their friends and, do all the things that they'd missed out on while he was gone. So no reason why they couldn't. Haven had also overdosed. Again, we don't know how. When paramedics arrived, they were able to give her Narcan multiple times and get her at least conscious enough to get her to the hospital, where she fought for 29 days. And then after 29 days, her body just couldn't take it anymore. She had been through so much in that short span of time. Her whole body just eventually started shutting down, and it was just too much.
So do you feel that somebody, or what can you say maybe about, do you think they were poisoned, or someone gave them something or put something in something, or what can you say right now? I know there's a lot of stuff still going on, right?
Yes,
one person has been charged,
mm-hmm.
but there's still active stuff going on,
yes.
in the court system.
I can say I do not feel like this is something that either of them would have chosen for themselves. I do not feel like they would have accepted anything knowing the honest truth of what was in it or what could possibly had happened to them. Especially Vaden, knowing that he had drill Tuesday. This happened on a Saturday night. He had guard drill on Tuesday. as a new private in the military, anytime you step foot on to any military base, installation, drill site, you are getting tested every single time. And he understood the ramifications of what would happen had you been tested and something were in your system. Now this isn't just, Walmart or Lowe's or Target that's drug testing you and they just send you home. Now this is federal. This is a whole new level of issues. This brings on a whole new set of problems. This throws your entire life out the window. I do not think that he would have willingly taken something himself, knowing the issues that it could have caused for him after all the hard work he had just went through to get through basic training and to get into the ROTC program at Western and get his engineering degree actually started. There is nothing that anybody can tell me that will say he did this on purpose.
So Vaden's 18. He
Yes.
has a girlfriend.
Mm-hmm.
He's just joined the military.
Mm-hmm.
And you guys have a big family. How has this impacted your family?
As hard as it is for any mother to ever have to lose one of their children, it's just as equally hard to watch your other children also have to lose their sibling. Somebody that they looked up to, that they supported, they cheered him on at basic training and wrote him letters and sent him pictures. And, we went to the store and bought all of his favorite snacks to take to family days so he could have all his little goodie baskets and things like that. To see them grieving is just as painful. And that's something that you don't ever get over. They have not wanted to be out in town. For the longest time, they didn't want to talk to anybody. They isolated from pretty much everybody because the way that this happened, it really makes you question who your friends really are. Who says they're family and who's not family, and, people that say that they love you and care about you and only have your best intentions at heart. This will really make you sit back and second guess who you can actually trust. And watching them have to go through something like that and have to grow up so quickly and learn these life lessons that me at 41 years old struggles with, and they're young kids, it's hard. They've had to lose, their brother. That's not something you can get back. It's not something that's going to get better overnight. Having to go back to school and see your friends and they hear stories of what happened. How do you explain something like that? How as a teenager do you go back to school and be like, oh, well, I'm okay, because you're not okay. You're never going to be okay from something like this. This isn't something that you just go to bed one night and wake up the next morning and everything's fine.
What would you say to the people responsible for their deaths?
That's a hard one. That one's really hard to think about because these were people that were very close to us for a very long time. Like they were like family to us as well. And so not only did we lose Vaden, but we lost a whole other family. And their kids get to come home at night, and mine don't. And I'm not saying that this isn't hard for them. I know as a mother, I would not want to sit back and watch my child go through something like this. But being a mother that lost her child, it's hard to be anything but angry because regardless of what happens, their kids are still here. And Vaden and Haven aren't. We don't get them back. They don't get to go home on good time served or we feel like you learned your lesson. There's no way to really have a conversation with them and have anything really nice to say.
Do you remember the last thing you said to Vaden or the last conversation you had with him?
Yeah.
If you had 5 minutes with Vaden one last time, what would you say to him?
That I was proud of him. That he was doing all the right things. He was making good choices for himself, and that he had worked so hard to get to where he was going, and regardless of what happened, we're still proud of him.
To some degree, this will be the last thing that people remember is what Vaden went through. But what do you want people to remember about him?
That he was funny. That he was always smiling. Even when he was upset or he was having a hard day, he would find a way to make people laugh. If it meant going and getting the Halloween bucket off the top of the refrigerator and putting it on his head and dancing through the living room in his underwear, or walking around with one sock on and hopping through the house like he was a frog. He wanted everybody to be happy. He didn't want people to be sad. He would not want to know that we were all upset and so heartbroken because of him. He would want people to remember his jokes, regardless of whether they made any sense or not. He would make you laugh. He was a funny guy.
I know that there's nothing that will bring him back, but knowing that we're honoring him in this way, and that you know, taking the time to speak with me, it's an honor.
I appreciate it. We just want people to remember Vaden in a good light. He was a good kid, and he worked hard, and that's what we want people to remember about him. He was the 1%. All my Army peeps will know what that means.
Can I give you a hug and say
Yes.
thank you so much for joining me on here?
Thank you.
You're welcome.